Hi guys, and welcome to this video. So this video is talking about the recent series of Doctor Who. So I've just finished watching Resolution, the New Year's special, which is very strange because we're used to a Christmas special, but hey ho, why they couldn't have released it a week and a bit earlier, who knows. So this series has been interesting. It's been a series that's tested new things, mainly the whole idea of a female doctor, but it feels slightly underwhelming and it feels different, and I can't quite place what that's about. There's probably a few little bits and pieces which I'm going to go into. So one of the things is that there seems to be a lot of scripts and stories that have good premises, good ideas, but the execution isn't that great. Or the execution's quite good and then they go and ruin it halfway through the episode. So there's been really good ideas and episodes, and they've tried to think through it, but there seems to be a whole lot of this, oh crap, we've got 5 minutes left, we've got to wrap this up. And the pacing seems wrong. We went from having 13 episodes down to 12, and then down to 10, and it's just that, I don't know. We're going to have 50-minute episodes rather than 45, but there still seems to be this problem with the pacing, and it seems to be an issue with Chibnall's writing, because even under some of the previous series, he had this thing of having to have a countdown for every episode that he did. So things like The Power of 3 or 42. Don't get me wrong, they're not terrible episodes, but there was always a countdown of something that was going to happen, and something had to be finished and completed before that countdown finished. Otherwise the world would end, or they'd fall into the sun. So I don't know. I mean, people have said that maybe it's to do with the fact that there are 3 companions, and that's part of the reason, because there seems to be less. There seems to be less of a concentration on the monster. There seems to be a little bit more on the companions and the lives they have, and obviously that is an aspect of the show. That they've never ignored that. Especially with Rose and Martha and Donna, they've all involved the family, but there seems to be a little bit more concentration on that rather than the aspect of the alien or the monster in that episode, and it dilutes some of what the episode is. So Resolution today, the premise of it was actually quite clever, but again, Ryan's and his dad's relationship got in the way of that slightly, and then it was a case of, how are we going to get around this? And then it was, at the end of the episode, he's got to save his dad from falling into a collapsing star, and it kind of ruined the bits about the Dalek. And I mean, I've seen comments today on Facebook and Instagram, and people complaining about the fact of the Daleks not looking like the Daleks. And on one hand, I agree with it. It's like, that's a bit crap design. I think someone compared it to a Swap-It Dalek. But at the same time, it's a Dalek that has been trying to rebuild a case, which half of it I don't understand how it was possible. I mean, it was built in a bloody shed in a farm, and he's apparently got missiles and Christ knows what. So how that ever came to pass with the fact that he's literally just made out of some scrap metal, I've no idea. But there are other bits and pieces. I mean, Yaz as a character, a lot of people have said this series that her character's not really been given a lot of insight. And I completely agree with it, because Graham and Ryan have been the sort of more focused on characters within the series. But there's also other gripes with the series. So don't get me wrong, I don't think Jodie's terrible. I think there is an issue with the writing and the directing on the show. I think that there's not that much interest in making her own Doctor. There seems to be a lot of them trying to bring in old personalities of each other Doctor, which every Doctor has done in some respect, but there seems to be a lot of childlike behaviour in some respect, and over enthusiasticness, and the overuse of the amount of times the Sonic has probably been used, and every time the fact that it is this constant pose and moving with your arm every damn time she uses it, it's just not needed. It becomes, and it's that's the thing. There are storylines that actually, without, they probably didn't need to use the Sonic as much as they have. They sort of, it's got to be this thing that solves the plot. It doesn't need to be that, and that's part of the reason why they got rid of it in the classic series, was because it became something that just continuously became the answer to everything. It's a tool. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's not. It shouldn't be the thing that solves everything, and it's like, oh yes, that's it, great, it's been done, the Sonic saved the day. And the amount of times that the Sonic in this series has died and then miraculously come back to life and has recharged, and the thing is I wouldn't say this series has been shit. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but I wouldn't have said it's blown my socks off or it's completely amazing, because of the fact that some of the scripts just haven't worked. And that's all because of the pace and the fact that a lot of it has been rushed into finishing up in the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I don't for a second think that that's down to Jodie's acting at all, or Mandip, or anyone like that. I think that there is a real sort of... There are people who can write episodes, and there are people who can write series, and I don't think Chibnall's someone who can write a series. There's been Backlash on two of the episodes, so Rosa and Demons of the Punjab, both because people have believed that it's a way of shoving political correctness down people's throats. And don't get me wrong, I can understand it. There is a lot of PC things that have been put into the series, and there's a lot of trying to relate it to the present day with what's going on in society. And sometimes you think, okay, yeah, there's a place for that, but at the same time there isn't, because yes, sometimes that political correctness does dilute the point of the show. It's a science fiction show about an alien that travels in a time machine, saving planets. It doesn't have to be about being PC. But then again, if you do an episode that is based on Rosa Parks or on the partition, the Indian partition, then you're going to have that racism. You're going to have that PC-ness of what it was like back then and what it's like now. And I think that people have complained about it, but if you look at other episodes, so Shakespeare Code for example, there was PC-ness in that. There was bits and pieces about Martha being a blackamoor lady. There's been sexism. There's all kinds of things that have been in Doctor Who over the years, and it's not been picked up as much. But I think there is a group at the minute who, as much as they don't admit it, are sexist. I admittedly, before Jodie was announced, over a year, 2 years ago probably, I was one of the people sitting there going, "It's a woman doctor, not watching it." But I watched that first episode, and I actually sat there and thought, you know what? Okay, let's give this a go. And I've watched it every episode. I've watched it every week, and there's been bits I've been like, yeah, this is great, and then there's been bits that I thought, come on, you can improve on this. And they're starting on production for series 12, and I hope that some of the writing gets better, and because the way I look at it is, if you look back at the previous series, every Doctor on their first series, it's always a bit rocky. If you look back at Matt Smith's first era, there was a lot of backlash because it wasn't David Tennant anymore, and he was too young, and he was too childish, and it didn't work for some people. And I'm never going to watch it again because it's not David Tennant. And it becomes the same every time the Doctor regenerates. It's a case of, the continuous cycle of, he's crap, I don't want to watch it, and then actually they're quite good. Now I miss them, now they're gone. We've all seen the picture. But there seems, every series for the new Doctor seems to be a little bit rocky to start with, and that's why I've given it its fair share, its fair punt, because I've still got a bit of hope that it's going to get to that point where actually it's like, yeah, this is right, this is where it should be, this is what it should be doing, this is the stories that it's got and the potential it can give. And admittedly that's gone down slightly this series as it's gone on, because again it's all to do with that, the way they produce it, the way they write it, the way they present it as an episode and as a story, and yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, I find it interesting because Chibnall back in the 80s was sitting there criticising, the writers then about how he felt that the storylines were then, and that they were terrible. And he's gone on to become a showrunner himself, and people are then sitting there criticising him. And actually, they've got a goddamn right to, because they're not as good as what they probably could have been. And actually, the writing's better, but is somewhat on level with what he was complaining about. So there is room for improvement, and I think there's always room for improvement. And I think there's also a level of working out where the Doctor is, and I think that with Capaldi, for example, his first series he was very angry and I'm very stern and I don't like hugs, and he was very sort of he wanted to be very serious, and then people weren't too keen on that, and then they changed his persona slightly for series 9, and then it changed again slightly for series 10, and the same with Matt Smith. His don't get me wrong, he's a bit like a Cocker Spaniel, scatty as anything, but his persona did change slightly. And the same with David Tennant's Doctor, his persona did change slightly throughout the series. So there's always that opportunity that the actor playing the Doctor and the story writers doing it are they have the room for improvement. And they can look back at the series they've written and go, right, okay, this is what we're going to improve. But I think there's a lot of negativity around it because Jodie is a female. And interestingly, the scripts that the writers wrote for the show were originally written for a man. During the casting for Series 11, no one knew whether it was a man or a woman. And so the scripts were written for a guy, and then adapted slightly to fit Jodie. And I think maybe that's part of where the issue comes from. And some people have sort of said that, things like tonight's episode, it was a rehash of a script because complaints from people, but also I think there's a rehash because of the fact that they've had to change because it's a female. And don't get me wrong, it's now 2019, and I'm very much a case of women should be as equal as men are. that's just the way society is now. And if people want to sit in their in their houses and watch it and sit there and complain about it and live 40 years in the past, then that's up to them. But obviously, it is a ever progressing show, and that's what Doctor Who is about. But I think there is still room for potential. I think that Jodie probably hasn't shown us all that she can do. I think that with regards to Chibnall, I don't know whether it's a deliberate thing of him writing the way he is, or whether it's him being under pressure of trying to make the episodes good and trying to put too much into an episode and not being able to portray that properly and get it all in. I'm sure there's probably a lot that was cut. I mean, come on, they for the what was it, the episode with the, I can't remember the name of it, the one with the frog. I mean, come on, they had a picture of a monster for that, and they never used it, and it was, I mean, that's a simple example of actually an episode that was quite well written in the idea of what this story was. And granted, myself and Luke Newman had both actually written episodes about Mirror Dimensions. We'd done that before the BBC. But the premise of the episode, the idea of the episode, it worked. And then that ending. Just the frog. And that's the thing. It wasn't the writing. It was literally the frog. Like, had it not been the frog, had it have been this monster that they had designed, it would have been a perfect episode. There are good episodes. Rosa was a very powerful episode, and if you get past the whole PC-ness of it, and some people were sort of saying about, oh well, they were in that time and they weren't wearing period clothing. Again, it's something that in some Doctor Who episodes they've done. They've acknowledged that and they've changed clothes. Some of them they haven't. But again, it was a good, powerful episode. Same with Kablam. Kablam was a very good episode, but again, very mixed messages at times. Doctor wants to save people, but yet she blows a guy up. Same with the arachnids in the UK. Doesn't want to kill the spiders, but puts them into a safe and lets them eat to each other to death. So there's a little bit of miscommunication on some respect, and work out what you're trying to portray and what you're trying to get across when you're writing it, because there's a lot of continuity that you're kind of breaking on yourself. So I mean that's my thoughts for this series, and I don't hate it. I think that that there was room for improvement, and I don't know whether that was just down to the timescale. I don't know if that's there is lots of things we could probably rattle off, but I don't know if it's going to be something that's going to continue in the far future, because the rate it's going, the viewing figures are going to go down so far. The BBC are going to go, nah, don't do it anymore, because it's not going to be worth the money. And that'll be it. There won't be any Doctor Who on TV anymore. And I hope that's not what happens, but that's a possibility. So if you've got any thoughts, then by all means leave them in the comments below. Please, don't get yourself into arguments about it, because I don't fancy having to sit there and delete comments and bits and pieces like that. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you haven't already, then hit that subscribe button. There's lots of bits and pieces I upload onto the channel, and hopefully some more bits will come this year. If you haven't already as well, you can go and follow me on Instagram and on Facebook as well, at BioDoctor900 and at BioDoctor900Props. If you've liked this video, then please give it a thumbs up, and hopefully see you in the next one, guys.